Right, just maybe while we wait for the computer, I feel slightly humbled to follow such an excellent presentation from Catherine there. Obviously someone that is a trailblazer as a teacher in terms of IT adoption in schools, and obviously thinking a huge amount on how we can use technology to improve learning. Just while we wait, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So 99% of you won't know me or my company, and there's probably 1% who know me very well. So my company is Futuresource. We're a research company, and I spend 99% of my time talking to suppliers, the technology side of the industry. So it is a great honor today to be here talking to you, the teachers, the students, the academics, who are there really looking every day on how you can improve education. My job as a company is to work with the suppliers, looking at what technology is out there, how it's moving, how it's developing, and how it's helping to enhance the world we live in. And we do a lot of market tracking and analysis around the world. So what I was hoping to do today with my presentation was not talking too much about any one specific product or solution, but talking about technology and education in general. You know, what are the trends? What do we see? I wanted to also give you some examples from around the world of things that have worked well, things that have worked not so well, and things we can learn about how technology can be utilized well in education moving forward. So 21st century learning is a term that's used a lot. Sometimes it's used too much. But I thought it's worthwhile just thinking from an overall standpoint. Why the need for innovation in technology? Why do we need innovation in education? Why do we need to change the way we've taught for 100 years? There's actually quite a few factors in play. So there's three factors to start. I think one factor that is sometimes overlooked is from a government and economy point of view. More and more governments, and as the world becomes smaller, a lot of countries now don't have as strong manufacturing capabilities as they had before. So research and development and service industries are often, for many countries, critical industries they want to promote. And in order to have an excellent research and development, you need IT skills. You need people who understand IT. You want a very technical, savvy workforce. And so many governments understand the best way to develop that technical, savvy workforce, use IT and teach IT from early ages in schools. We've talked quite a lot today about how the world is changing. We have social media, we have the internet, we have what we call a 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Information is out there. So how we access that information is critical. And preparing children for that world, which is a different world from 50 years ago, is obviously a key factor. And then obviously technology itself can be a great facilitator. It's not the answer to all learning, clearly. Great teachers, great content is still, of course, the key thing. But it can allow many new things, such as personalized learning, more automated learning, problem solving, instant assessment. Technology allows you to do new things. And those three factors overall are the key factors that are driving IT in education. So when we talk about the modern world, people always say how it's changed and you need new skill sets. So I thought, well, let's try and put them down. Information gathering. I think Catherine gave the example of the big library. Students are only 2 clicks away now from so much information. So teaching them how they can actually access that information, how can they go and find it in an organized way, is absolutely crucial. Content creation is also a skill now. And I must admit, I think I need to go back to school after seeing Thomas's presentation earlier with beautiful formats, well presented. Students now are learning how to edit video, how to write software apps, how to use so many different tools that are available out there so that you can get your content across in a fantastic, dynamic way. That again is a skill that needs to be taught. And then the other skills, I think, are skills that have been there all the time, but are being utilized in different ways. We need to teach students how to be creative, how to innovate. Always they have to problem solve and learn how to solve issues out there and work things out for themselves. One thing that sometimes gets forgotten when we talk about technology is actually collaborations. I think Catherine talked about the danger that children spend too much time themselves in their virtual world or reading their own screens. They still need to work together in groups, learn to be part of a team. And that's where the balance of technology together with social skills is, of course, so important. And communication is always an important topic. So how does technology support learning? We've talked today a lot about engagement. So many examples. We've seen around the world there has been a lot of research into technology within education. What impact does it have? How does it work? And some of the things that have been proven time and time again, as with the research with 3D, is if you put content in an exciting, well-presented way, you can engage students more. They get excited, they wake up, and hopefully then the recall and the amount they remember will develop. You can personalize learning. This is obviously one of the biggest issues within learning. If you have a class of 30 students and you have a big range between the brightest student and maybe the least bright student, how do you manage that? How do you stop the really bright student from getting bored? This is where with new technology it is possible to tailor what they're doing with voting systems, with PCs, so that you can always challenge and go along at their own pace, so students can learn at the pace that's right for them. And that was very difficult before. Teaching students how to learn themselves, how to teach themselves, is a key part of learning today. And then one other key thing that I think as teachers, I'm sure you'll appreciate, is assessment. You can actually assess students in real time using PCs, voting, whatever the technology is. How many of those students are understanding the topics you're going through? Well, now you can just write it down, ask the question, straight away the answer comes back. And you know whether you have to go over that topic again or whether the students have got it. These are tools that are enhancing learning and really beginning to change the dynamic moving forward. It does open up a lot of questions as to in 10, 20, 30 years' time, what will the role of the teacher be? Will the teacher be more a mentor, more a facilitator, working with different parts of technology? And certainly that's a question that I think will be a long debate as we move forward and we see more and more technology in the classroom. So I wanted to talk about the different technologies out there. So we've talked about 3D a lot today, but there's also a lot of different solutions out there right now, and there's a lot of things that will come to market over the next 3 to 4 years. And a starting point is the main display device, and certainly projectors are typically the best solution out there for getting a big screen, good value, good quality picture, and you can use them as a central focal point in a classroom to either just show very basic content, just show your PowerPoints, your video, or start adding interactivity onto them and start getting more advanced. There are also other solutions, of course, like flat panels and interactive whiteboards, which have been touched on. But certainly that main display device is still very, very crucial in the classroom. What's interesting as we move forward is then there's more and more other pieces of equipment that are out there which can link together and help to form part of that classroom environment. You've got tools such as voting systems now, handheld devices, where you can very quickly ask questions, answer questions. Visualizers, a pretty interesting product. It's pretty much a product that's been around for many years. You just have a book, a rock, and you just, with a camera, look at that rock and you can show it up on the screen. An old piece of technology that's been reinvented and is fabulous use in the classroom. So this is the traditional kind of AV side of the industry, where all of that technology comes together and you have that sort of integrated classroom that's out there. I think what's interesting, and something we'll see over the next few years, is PCs coming into the classroom. And in some areas it will move slowly, some areas it will move quickly. Here in Turkey there is a lot of talk with the Ministry of Education of putting tablets into the classroom. And this is where things get really interesting. How do these devices work together? How, as a teacher, if you've got a main classroom display, the children have tablets, how does that work? What does that bring, and how does it work together? Many of you might have seen an example outside, I believe it's with AWIN technology, where you can have a software which allows a student or a teacher to be walking around the class. The teacher doesn't have to stand at the front of the class anymore. They can stand at the back of the class. They can stand in amongst the groups. And you can flick and change the content. You could ask one of the students, okay, I'm going to ask 5 of you to come up with some ideas on a new design of something. Give control to the student. The student then shows that on the screen. So that interaction between main display, AV system, and potentially PCs could open up a host of new opportunities moving forward. One of the things we've seen being experimented upon is actually the traditional classroom has always been the teacher at the front and the students line up looking at the teacher. Now, if we have this kind of technology moving forward, should we have that traditional setup in classrooms? There have been a few places that have been experimenting with having classrooms where the room is set up in groups for more collaboration, or even having furniture that's actually movable. So in my home country in the UK, there was a program set up by the government, which unfortunately is not continuing now, but they were building new schools. And there was a lot of examples where schools were building quite open plan rooms, but they basically then had movable furniture, which they could, depending on what they were trying to do that day, they could put in place tables where students sat facing each other to collaborate, or different groups, or then the more traditional style like this kind of room. So you can actually change the layout of the room depending on the type of skills you're trying to utilize at a time. Again, the technology is assisting these kind of developments moving forward. I think from an educator point of view as well, one of the challenges will be is how do you integrate all of this different technology together? Where is the content stored? Do you access the content in completely different locations? And what software holds everything together? So there's many different devices out there, and there will be many different choices of classroom setup that you have. It might be that you don't have an interactive display, but you actually have a tablet that's interactive, and the display just outputs. And maybe you prefer to do it that way, or maybe you prefer to have an interactive classroom where everybody's getting involved, everybody can go up to the screen, access that high quality content. So there are many different routes forward, and as Catherine said, there will be new technologies coming to market. Gesture control is already here in the TV side of the business. So over the next year, you will see a lot of TVs coming out with gesture control, with vocal recognition. We do expect over the next 1 to 2 years, you will see that coming into education as well. And that will open up many new opportunities. So that can be quite daunting. So many different technology choices, so many different pieces of equipment out there. How do you utilize that, and how do you deploy that in an effective way? So I thought let's make some considerations out there. I think one of the key considerations is, technology is great, but if you've got no content, you've got no software, and you've got no idea how that's going to be used, then the technology is useless. There's no point having technology. Of course, there's always the question, what format is that content? How is it stored? Does the content actually follow the curriculum? Is it something that is part of the curriculum you follow, or is it something that's just additional, you show for 2 minutes, 3 minutes to make an extra point and you put it away? One of the questions that we will see in the industry a lot moving forward is many suppliers will come to market with their own software, their own packages, which are tailored to be used only within their own infrastructure. Apple is the obvious example with iTunes. So that's a closed platform. The benefit of those kind of closed platforms is the content, the software, the hardware, it should all work together. It should all link together well and be suited for those kind of uses. The disadvantage is if you are a teacher and you're creating content or lesson plans or videos for yourself, and then you move to another school that has a different system, you can't use it. And clearly that is not always attractive. And that is something moving forward, we will see more and more suppliers coming with open source software and then other suppliers trying to come with their own infrastructure. And that would be a challenge as schools to decide which route you want to go down. Infrastructure is clearly very, very important. Where will you store all this content? We are confident cloud computing will become a very, very key thing in the education market. We do anticipate moving forward, as more content becomes digital, it will be stored in the cloud. For easy access, simplicity, it will be a key thing. Connectivity is a key issue, of course. You can have all of the technology devices in the world, but if you can't get on the internet, you have no wireless infrastructure, there is no point. And there are a few examples of big projects around the world where the technology has gone in first and the infrastructure has gone in second. That doesn't make sense. And sometimes that does happen when maybe things are done for political reasons, not necessarily for education reasons first. And that's obviously very, very important. The minister mentioned earlier, the education mentioned earlier, the training, teacher training, is clearly an absolutely critical issue. Again, you can put the technology in, you can utilize technology, but if teachers are not comfortable with how that works within their school, they go on summer holiday, they come back, something is in their classroom, and no one has shown them how to use it, then clearly that is not going to work. And so a continuous training cycle, both face-to-face, online, different methods, is clearly a key consideration for deploying IT in education. Security is another issue. With some hardware, it is attractive for people to steal it. Generally now what you'll find, especially with projectors, you'll find a lot of projectors now have good security features in them. Various different software solutions, just to make sure that there's no way that anybody can try and steal those products. Also damage, a lot of products can be quite lightweight, and we know students like to drop things and jump them around and push them around. So are they tailored for education is a key issue. When we talk about more and more content and accessing the internet and all these things, security in terms of what are we allowing students to see, age-specific content, giving teachers control over, in a classroom, they don't want to be teaching and all of a sudden someone in the back is on the internet or playing Angry Birds or playing a game. There are more and more software packages now that are coming that are allowing teachers to control or to see what children are doing with that technology. And clearly that is very, very important. Management from an IT perspective is becoming very important. So can you manage your technology remotely? So is it networked? So you can see if the technology is getting old, it's broken, somebody in an IT team somewhere can see that from a remote location and actually view and be able to sort those problems out. Is it upgradable? If you're making big investments up front, you do not want to get some technology which in 2 to 3 years' time you cannot upgrade. That's a very key point. And of course, school policies are very, very important. One of the biggest things that I hear within schools all the time, I'm sure you have the same issues. Do you allow social media, for example? If you allow more IT into schools, how do you deal with those kind of things? Developing key policies within a school of how you use IT clearly is a massive issue with regard to rollout. Then from a purchasing point of view, obviously technology is expensive generally. You know, it's a big investment for schools. You want to make sure you are making the right investment. But it's not only the upfront cost, it's the total cost of ownership. Looking at how long does that product last? Is it a 2-year cycle, 5-year cycle, 10-year cycle? Does it need replacement parts? How expensive are those replacement parts? Do you need to maintain the products? Do you need to clean filters on projectors, for example? Does it have high power consumption? All of these issues clearly affect the overall total cost of ownership and have to be key parts of the decision making when you look at IT deployments over time. So many, many decisions when you're looking at the overall IT deployment in education. One of the things that I hear a lot, obviously, when we talk about IT deployments is the world is in a difficult economic situation. Things are pretty tough out there. You know, where are we going to find the money to put all of this money into technology and education? And I just want to give you some examples of some interesting business models we've seen around the world. So we are seeing more and more large-scale deployments of technology in education. And governments and schools are being increasingly creative in how they fund those deployments. There's a very interesting deployment in Portugal. So in Portugal, one of the sort of poorer countries in Europe, every single child in Portugal that goes to school has their own netbook. 1.8 million children in Portugal. This happened in 2007, 2008. It's the leading country in the world, which might be a surprise to some of you. It's a surprise to me. Now, the interesting thing is, how did they pay for this? So if you think about technology in schools, there are some people who, from the industry, who will benefit if there is a lot of technology in schools. Telecommunication companies, because they will get more content transfer, more broadband activity. So in Portugal, the government did a deal with the telecommunication companies in the country. And actually, the telecommunication companies, what they did is they provided a lot of the funding for this project. In return, parents in Portugal had to sign up to a 2-year broadband package from the telecommunication companies. And this is a kind of model we're seeing more and more in many different countries around the world. Telecommunication companies have a lot to gain from IT in school, because clearly it will develop the level of IT throughout the whole industry. That's an area we're seeing some innovation. There are other examples where we're seeing lots of innovation at school level. So in the UK, where I'm from, we're seeing a lot of schools that have invested for many years in whiteboards and projectors, and budgets are getting tougher. Certainly in the UK, budgets have gone down. So many schools now are looking to lease equipment. So actually purchase or actually pay monthly fees, and they know over a year just their monthly fees for all of their IT equipment, and they know after 3 years they will get an upgrade to that equipment over time. In some instances, we're also beginning to see schools ask parents for contributions to their equipment. In some countries that's possible, in other countries that's not possible. But it's an interesting trend we're beginning to see more and more. And certainly something, as we see more, I'd say more consumer type products coming into education. So in the US, there is at the moment a lot of iPads being used in education. It's just beginning, and clearly parents are beginning to pay for the apps for their students. And so we're seeing more and more sort of involvement of parents in funding of technology. One thing that's quite controversial when we talk about PCs is something called bring your own. So schools actually asking children to bring their own technology into the class. Now clearly this is controversial because, you know, what if one child has the worst product in the market and the other child has the best product in the market? Isn't it unfair? Isn't there a chance that children could be bullied because of that in different social levels? But certainly as we see more and more cloud computing, and the ability to manage software upgrades, IT upgrades remotely, as we see more and more spread of that, then certainly allowing students to bring their own technology to school is becoming easier to manage if that is a route a school is happy to go down. Some schools do not like that idea, do not want to encourage that idea, but others are finding it in an interesting way to try and develop their technology use within school whilst budgets are under pressure. So, to conclude, there's some fantastic technology out in the marketplace. We've seen some great examples of 3D today, as well as lots of other new technologies coming to the education sector. But at the end of it, it's how does technology improve education? We have seen examples around the world due to politics, due to many different issues, where education has come secondary to technology. And that's not right. Clearly, if you're spending large amounts of money bringing technology into education, it has to improve learning for our students. And I would encourage, I know there are many suppliers here, Texas Instruments, the 3D companies who are here trying to work, trying to learn, trying to understand more and more about what you need from the school. So I think a day like today is absolutely fantastic. Hopefully, please question and push and ask the suppliers as much as you can, because I know they are very keen to try and develop and help the education market and understand what you need to drive things forward. Thank you very much for your time.